Okay, so we are here today to talk about is episode 3 of what's your take, and today we are talking about, are we there yet for electric cars? And can electric vehicles be a mainstream reality soon? So we have been hearing a lot about this in the past, especially the past month or so, the past few weeks as well. But so it's just to get a pulse check on where are we now. Are we actually going to be all driving electric cars soon, and so on. So I'm probably just going to start with Martin first. Just a question to throw, because there was some news today about even the government was in Malaysia is saying that we will have special car plate numbers for electric vehicles. So given with all this new technology that's moving around, do you see this new tech helping to accelerate the adoption of EVs? Maybe Martin can take that first, and then we can take Stefan's take.
Yeah, I guess it will. I think there's probably a few areas where tech is really going to make a big difference. I think not last week, the week before, an English company said they've cracked the holy grail of charging. So they've got it down to 6 minutes to fully charge a car. It's funny enough, the car's been built on a Lotus frame, so car frame. So I guess that charging is obviously battery technology, full stop. I mean, the downside of technology really needs to sort of it takes too long to charge. So I feel like with charging, we're still in the old days of mobile phones, whereas now you get a 125 watt charger, you can charge your phone in 17 minutes. Because that's quite potentially a lot of downtime. And I guess really it kind of links together, isn't it? Really, I mean, the technology on infrastructure. I mean, how it's a big issue for people when they want to if they want to do an EV, and how is the technology going to change on the Earth's charging infrastructure? I guess they're linked, but I guess the more power you can pump into the battery within reason is going to help. In terms of other technology, I mean, performance is pretty good now. I mean, I guess they're really. I mean, you see the hypercars and so forth. For an everyday car, I'm not sure how much further they're going to push the barrier. I mean, obviously, we talk about with LinkedIn with EV cars, you talk about self-drive. I'm not too sure I want somebody to. I get the LRT self-drive, but and then I guess really for me, it's about how longer term, how we can sustain it, not just in first and second world countries, but in the third world countries. So how are we going to sustain it because having electric cars in theory is good, but you've still got to generate the power, right?
Right.
So is it?
That's a good point. Actually, about the technology.
I mean, solar energy. Is it solar? Is it wind? Or what are we going to do that allows us to bring down the cost of charging even greater than it is currently now? Particularly if you're in Europe, where energy is very expensive, as probably Stefan will tell you. He's back in Germany at the moment, but it's quite frightening how much the cost is compared to here. And then I guess the last thing is really for me would be about technology. It's got about how they can extend the lifespan of a car. I mean, if you take a normal combustion engine, it can last what, 15, 20 years? Without really having to do anything major surgery on it. EV, I'm not too sure where we're at, how far, and what the technology. How will technology help us with that whole process? I guess that's probably my quick take.
Okay. Stefan, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, thank you, Janisha. I mean, the question shouldn't be whether we are ready for the cars. I would argue that we need to argue the discussion a bit further reaching, because you have basically most of the European car makers saying we're going to stop ICE, internal combustion engines, by 2035 or whatever it is. And at some point, except for the hardcore petrol heads at Lamborghini, I think, we will have no choice but to have an EV car as a new car. The question then is, how do we get through this transition? Because at some point we will have a lot more EVs on Malaysian roads that need charging. So we would have to look at the power grid. We would have to look at charging stations at home or in rest stations. We would have to address recycling. These batteries tend to reduce to 80% of power by 8 years of usage. What do we do with them then? Landfill isn't an option. And we also should, with that galloping development that we are seeing, see whether or not it actually makes sense to buy an EV now. Like Martin just said, we've got 6 minutes down now to full charge for some vehicles. Maybe in 2 years' time, that's a minute. Maybe in 10 years' time, it's just a thing where we need to charge once a week. So are we ready? We can buy cars now. That's not the problem. I think we need to just look 10 years, 20 years into the future. And that's where the real thinking and scenario planning and mulling over of things should happen, in my view.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Stefan. So I think one of the things you mentioned about just now was also the cost side of it. The upfront cost of getting an electric vehicle is really a barrier because it's not affordable here. I mean, definitely in Malaysia, it's not affordable yet. So in UK, it's actually has been a really way. UK is much more advanced than us, and also I guess in terms of the infrastructure wise in the UK as well as the roads in UK, they are more. It is easier probably. I'm not sure whether maybe Martin can provide your take on that, right? Whether it's that easier for adoption of electric vehicles as compared to, locally where we are now, we are all in Malaysia now. For those who are listening, definitely Stefan is our other listener here is from Malaysia. So definitely in Malaysia it is a little bit more harder, right? Yeah. What do you think, Martin, in terms of cost wise? Yeah.
Cars are obviously. You have to look at the danger is sometimes you compare Europe and the UK, say, and America with a lot of Southeast Asian countries where in theory you're looking at comparing apples to apples, but actually you're really comparing apples to pears, because the cost of a vehicle in Europe and the UK and America is far cheaper. So you don't have those same eye-watering prices for an EV that you do perhaps here, and obviously the cost of the standard of living and is higher in terms of their basic salary, average wage and so forth. I guess really, if you look at some of the European countries, take UK for example. From when I used to live in the UK a long time ago, but I remember it's got to be probably at least 10 plus years ago, if not longer, that they were already installing charging stations. This is way before Tesla. They were starting to look at charging stations for electric vehicles then, and the government was very. Europe is very focused, and there's still been. I think Stefan is quite right. When he said earlier on, in Europe you're not going to be left much choice in a very short period of time. You have no choice but to either go for an EV. Maybe it's you can get a part combustion, what they call it, PEHV, whatever it is, as well. But I think if you look at the countries in Europe and you look at that, they've had an agenda for quite a long time about it's all linked to emissions and so forth, and they've had an agenda. So the government's poured a lot of money into it very early on. So the infrastructure as they built and rebuilt places and built roads and rebuilt the roads, they built the infrastructure with it. Mm-hmm. I think that's a difference. You're looking at, we're probably Malaysia compared to say Europe is probably we're probably at least 5-10 years behind in terms of infrastructure and everything else, and it's a significant investment. And of course the difference as well is the one big thing is petrol's expensive in Europe, very expensive, and diesel compared to compared to Malaysia, which is all subsidized. So if you want the main reasons why Europe is probably and consumers are more happy to adopt EV in Europe, outside of the fact that they've been forced to, is the fact actually running costs are cheaper. They don't have the fuel. Fuel prices are very high in Europe in comparison. So that will actually is a lot cheaper. Whereas here, it's probably, depending on the car, it's debatable whether or not there's much of a difference in what it costs you.
Right. Yep. Yep. Definitely here, I think although the government is trying to, implement a lot of initiatives to make it more affordable, but it is not. And then we haven't even gone to the part about servicing and maintenance, which we will talk about that later.
Yeah.
Maybe I will ask Stefan about what about, because EVs are not just about cars, so as you are also leading the Asian trucker magazines and all that. So I'm sure you are familiar with how the commercial vehicles wise, where are we now also in terms of electric vehicles there?
Yeah, a very interesting question, because obviously the usage of a personal car versus a commercial vehicle is very, very different. If you have a passenger car, if say that breaks down, or if you can't use it for a day for whatever reasons, you just simply take a taxi. But if your truck or bus can't run, you effectively lose income. What we are seeing, and I find that very interesting, we now have in Malaysia a situation where the emission norm, as per law, is Euro 2M. And I'm not going to go into details what that all means, just to illustrate the point that legally we are on 2M. We've got truck providers that already sell Euro 5, and we have next week the official launch of the first electric heavy-duty truck. And so with the commercial vehicles, we are literally all over when it comes to the engine technology or drivetrain technology. And again, the same issues prevail. You need to charge them, you need to service them. Buying the vehicle is an easy task, and expensive, whereby everyone agrees that with the increasing numbers, economies of scale will set in. So the current status quo that electric vehicles, both cars and commercial vehicles, are more expensive, that will change fairly quickly as soon as we've gotten to a stage where it's not just the early adopters that buy one of these cars for whatever reason. And with that, the same problems that you need to service the vehicles, you need to recycle the batteries. At the moment, yes, they are still very expensive compared to normal combustion engines.
So in terms of let's say either Singapore or Malaysia, I have read articles about electric buses, so I think Singapore is already doing that. What about Malaysia? Are we going towards that yet?
Any bus manufacturer will tell you that one is ready to go, but the push from the government has not been seen yet. We know that Malaysia is saying carbon neutral by 2050, but how that breaks down into milestones over the next decades, I don't think that has been clearly communicated. We've had a hydrogen bus in Kuching, which has since ceased operation, and we've got the Sunway line is an electric one. So yeah, it's possible, and buses are the best use cases because they run 250 kilometers a day, and they are parked overnight in a depot where they can recharge. So that's a natural, fantastic first application that we can have.
Right. Okay. So Martin, also back to you. Now, again, talking about the cost part of it, right? So there was an article that just now we read that, I mean, there was, I shared about this event, actually, the event that was, and then they was showcasing some pretty luxury brands of cars that are going on the electric vehicles. So do you think in terms of cost wise, the local manufacturers are they going to, which they already said they are going to do that, right? They're going to, I mean, our local brands here in Malaysia, they are going to go electric. They're going to start doing that. But do you think it's actually okay? This is a bit we are trading on a very dangerous ground here. Is it actually even possible for them? Yeah.
Proton, yes, because obviously they got Geely. So Geely has got electric. It has got EVs. So in theory, they could port the technology across. Perodua, I'm not sure about Perodua. I saw there was a mock-up today of a EV, and Perodua is saying that they are looking to produce one in 2024. I mean, I saw that. I saw your article. I saw the advertisement for this EV second year of this EV show. Yeah, most of the brands with all the top marks, so BMW and so forth. All the essentially for the general public, majority of the general public, they're unattainable brands. But I saw that a couple of days ago, there's another Chinese company called Nante, is it? Nante. Yeah. Netta. And they've got Netta V with SUV, which is going to launch. They're launching, which at 99,000 ringgit. It's still, I mean, it's better, but it's still, because I bought a BYD's cheapest price for BYD, I think, is about 130. I think on the road, 130,000 on the road. So I think I agree with Stefan. Economies of scale will definitely come in at some point. I think I don't think we're treading on anybody's toes to say, I think it's difficult if you're at the Perodua or Protons of this market. Then in the market, your main core business is still combustion engines. And will it be for the next? Where will you make most of your money in the next 10, 15 years? Combustion engines, because that's is probably, they need that length of time for infrastructure and everything else to be in place for them to really push forward on the EV side. But I think I think Proton definitely has an advantage because they've got Geely behind them. So, and Geely does have that. But for the general masses, I think they're great. But are we close? The answer, I think, is, to be honest, is no. I think if they were a lot closer than they perhaps than they actually are, they'd be talking a lot more about it. That's my personal opinion, but I don't know. I don't have access to obviously what these manufacturers R&D are doing. But that's kind of my take. I think you'll always get the early adopters, and the early adopters will hopefully blaze a trail. I think it's difficult. I think it's always very easy for people to compare us to Singapore. Singapore is just a very small island where everything's pretty much close to all the power cables and everything they're not above ground, they're all pretty much underground, right? So to make connecting everything up is a lot easier. We're a big country with a few large cities, and the rest of the population is spread out. So it does make everything a lot harder for the government. But I guess really, is this being carbon neutral? Is it by 2050? Is it going to be a government-led thing, or will a consumer drive it by the fact that they want to adopt EVs? I think will probably dictate some of it.
Right.
Automotive perspective.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's no way for us to sort of leapfrog over all the challenges that we are facing now with the charging infrastructure, with the cost and all that, unless something else happens, like maybe someone invent a battery that is like as small as our handphone batteries, and that could be just inserted and recharged like that. It's like it takes a massive leapfrog. And maybe from either both Stefan or you, Martin, based on where you have been, the countries you have been to, which country do you think globally is like they are almost there? Probably not. I don't think there's any country that's already like they've really gone all EVs or
Well,
partially.
Norway's probably the closest, right? I mean, they said I think they've only got 2 years left before every vehicle has to be EV, and they're pretty much, I think they're over 80% already.
Oh, who's that? Which
Norway.
Norway? Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Okay.
So they're probably they're the lead. They're the nation per head who's the furthest ahead as far as I understand it.
Oh.
I mean,
okay.
Germany. I don't know. I mean, Stefan, you're obviously in Germany at the moment, but I mean, Germany. I haven't been to Germany for a number of years, but Germany seems to be pushing ahead quite quickly. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I mean, we see electric cars here on the roads, but it's still predominantly combustion engines. And it's interesting because right now the narrative in the media is about heating systems at home.
Mhm.
So there is a shift in focus of where energy can be preserved and where one should be putting the effort in order to achieve carbon neutrality. Germany has switched off nuclear power plants, so how do we compensate for that? So I think there's the difficulty is to compare countries. Take Malaysia again. We have hardly any train lines that could connect us to even big cities. Whereas here in Germany, you can easily hop onto a train and get to the last milk can that's parked somewhere. But it's a very difficult comparison to make, and I think one also needs to look at commuting patterns. I mean, here it's not uncommon that someone travels 80 kilometers to get to work. So is a diesel probably the best engine type? So it's not that easy. But from all the discussions that I've had with anyone in that realm of electrification, it boils down to government incentives and how eager a government really is to push this agenda.
Right. Yeah, I think we also see nowadays. I mean, some governments, they're a bit more reactive. They're seeing which government does what, and then they're okay. We follow suit. We do the same thing, right? So, like for example, even in Malaysia, now back to Malaysia again, they are just talking about making it affordable, having charging stations properly, but they haven't looked at the other part of it, which we are going to talk about. Now, the servicing and maintenance part. Like, how are they people who are trained, to service an electric vehicle? Because this is not going to be your normal mechanics or technicians who are going to be able. They need to be trained in a special way, right? And we're not seeing people doing that now. I mean, there are some institutions who are teaching people doing that, but I don't think because that's a lot of that. Yeah, what do you think? Is that right? What do you think, Martin? And then back to you, Stefan, later.
Well, in theory, and when this is in theory, servicing costs on an electric vehicle are much, much lower. I mean, the commercials probably, I'm sure Stefan will point out is a different thing. I mean, they have done some surveys. Even here, they say average servicing cost for 10,000 kilometers is about 1,000 ringgit on a combustion engine, about 200 bucks on an EV, because it's only got four motors. Essentially, it's got, depending on the car, it's only got four motors. You don't have any brakes. You don't have the same because there's only one gear, right? It's just one gear. So I think from that perspective, but it's the expertise. I think it'd be interesting to see what Tesla does. So Tesla's their official launch is the 20th of July. What Tesla's going to do in terms of, because I don't think it's necessarily the mechanical side for commercial. On just a normal consumer EV, I think as much as anything else, it's the electronics and the computer system software.
Right.
Maybe we might be okay on that because we got some pretty talented software engineers if they come back. But I think, so, but if you look at the standard, what they say the standard prices are, the servicing cost of a EV is much lower. I guess the big cost is the battery.
Yep.
The lifestyle, how long does these batteries last?
Yep.
I mean, they only got, a battery only is able to take a life cycle of so many charges.
Right.
So
Definitely.
I think that's probably going to be the big thing is how do we have the expertise if we need to change out the battery? Do we have the expertise to do it?
Right.
Even pick up the faults on a battery.
Yep. Stefan, what about you? What's your take on this about this maintenance part of it?
Yeah, basically it's a huge opportunity, and at the same time there is the pitfall that the workforce isn't ready for it. We've long passed the times where someone working in a workshop would be a grease monkey, someone that just takes a hammer to the engine to dangle around a bit and find out what's happening. So we need to get the school curricula or the education system geared up to this. At the moment, what we will see, because we have both combustion engines and electric vehicles on the road, we would need twice as many technicians, kind of, because it's a completely different technology. You can't just say, okay, and tomorrow you do EVs. It's a different skill set. It's a different method of working. You need to change workshops. Workshop designers need to reskill themselves. Just as a simple example, if you look at any combustion engine, almost the engine is easily accessible. You open the hood, or you go to the back of the bus, you open it, and you have the engine in front of you. Now with electric vehicles, the batteries are typically placed, or not typically, but they can be placed on top. So you would have to have a system, rigs in place to actually be able to access them. Then you have to train people more on safety, because you're working at heights. You deal with electricity, 480 volts that instantaneously fries you if you do something wrong. So there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of upskilling or reskilling the workforce. And this is not something that happens overnight, and we will not see combustion engines disappear overnight either. So we would have to work with this parallel technology, if you wish, for quite some time.
Right. Yep. I remember years back, in this organization called Institute of Motor Industry UK, they were already highlighting these challenges about having different type of skill sets for maintaining electric vehicles, or even just partially hybrid vehicles, hybrid vehicles with electric batteries and so on. Because like what you say, they're almost becoming an electrician rather than a mechanic, like a diesel mechanic. But we look at our government now, or even I don't think about maybe just look at Malaysia, and we are only looking at this part of it, and we are not looking at the servicing part of the vehicles. Whether do we have the infrastructure to maintain these vehicles? What if they break down on the road, right? Like we're driving halfway and it breaks down, so what happens? Where do we go? Which service centers are able to handle that kind of vehicles? How long does it take to repair and so on? We even have not addressed those topics yet, I think, and we're just talking about how can we afford it and how can we charge the vehicle, right? So do you think these are big challenges for us to go through that, and who should be responsible to give this a push in Malaysia, for example. Let's talk about Malaysia. Stefan, maybe you can take this first.
Yeah, that one I'm fairly cool about because first of all, we surely have seen the same thing happening with combustion engines 130 years ago. Back then, you had to go to a pharmacy to get your petrol. So
Wow.
skip forward 130 years and we have a whole infrastructure. So that will happen. And for a simple reason, it's business. So here I am thinking maybe I should start a workshop for electric vehicles. I mean, if I'm not doing it, someone else will have that idea. You have established workshops, Limb Tire, for instance, comes to mind. If they integrate services a bit more, looking at tires and the motors of electric vehicles that might need servicing, yeah, so there's money to be made. That will fall in place very quickly.
All right. Okay. Martin?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the good thing about being a little bit behind other countries is that you're able to get the benefit of the other countries' failures, their lessons learned from that. I mean, one of the things I noticed is, I mean, BYD came into the market fairly recently. I mean, so Sime Darby Mobility opened up that showroom, and then I noticed literally it seems to me almost like every week now they're opening up another dealership in another part of the country. I guess there's probably two parts to that. One, because they want to have a greater reach for sales, number one, but secondly is that they probably realize that they're going to have to kind of self-fund this infrastructure for servicing and repair. I agree with Stefan. I mean, if you really wanted to had some spare money and if you were the likes of, say, Limb Tire and so forth, I haven't asked him what he would do, but it's an interesting question. I might ask him next time I see him. But if you had the spare money, if you put some money in now and skilling up your workforce, you may have to wait 5 years before you get any realistic solid business coming in, regular business, but you probably would be in a good position then to pick up, because not everybody's going to want to take it's like if you have a combustion engine, not everybody, once they get to a certain point in their warranty, will they take it back to the dealer to get it serviced. When they're just quite happy to let the warranty expire. I think probably with batteries, with EVs, probably people will want to stay with the manufacturer, but they will at some point sell it, and then where do we go from there? Plus, I guess the other thing is, if you take, I mean, we talk about last year, over 2,000 EVs sold, over 10,000 in the country now, and they say it's going to be 1% in the next couple of years. It's what, 7,500 cars, EV cars. Well, what percentage of those is going to be recon?
Yep.
Right. So recon is probably, I mean, they were the guys 3-4 years ago they were the first to put in a basic EV charging system network, and they were the guys who were bringing in the cars. The downside is that they don't get a warranty. So I mean, I guess I don't know how if you buy a Tesla or you buy an EV vehicle from a recon dealer, are they already able to service it, or I don't know what happens. I remember Tesla used to have to fly somebody in from Hong Kong to fix it, because there was no one here to do it, because there was no skill set. I think Tesla's different, but I think for a normal EV that isn't available in this country, that you buy from a recon dealer, I'm not really sure how they're servicing at the moment, because I'm sure if you bought a Nissan Leaf from a recon dealer, I'm sure your local Nissan dealer can't service it. Nowhere to start. So I think it is a valid point where what we need to have that. It's another part of that infrastructure challenge, isn't it? But I think some people may, if they bet early, they may make a lot of money in the long term, because people aren't going to keep these cars forever, are they? They're going to sell them. And once they sell them, then somebody's probably not going to, as a used car, not going to want to go back to the dealer to get it serviced every time. It'd be too expensive.
Yep. Stephen, what do you think about this second-hand? I mean, electric vehicles. What about their resale value? I mean, we are jumping the gun here because we're not even, really having EVs a lot in Malaysia yet. But do you think their resale value will be how? What are the factors will affect that?
I think price. I mean, if you can get me an electric vehicle that I'd really like to have now, and we've seen Tesla vehicles in Malaysia prior to the company announcing that they will distribute the vehicles in Malaysia. I think, again, there's an opportunity for someone to make money and an opportunity for some other people to have something that they want to have. The issue is just far-reaching with insurance and spare parts and all of that. So I would just hope that people make an informed decision. And again, further down the road, there might be a business opportunity, because in the commercial vehicle sphere, we are seeing truck and bus makers saying, we will service recon and parallel imports because we want to make sure that at least the spare parts are original and that all these things are done right. Because if something happens, then ultimately it's the brand that suffers. No one will care whether the vehicle was purchased through official channels or some cousin that just has connections. So there's a lot going on in that realm as well. And yeah, I mean, right now probably there is a couple of people that really have a strong desire to have an electric vehicle, and they would do anything to get it. And I mean, others will just sit and wait and say, well, if I want a Tesla, I want it from the official dealer.
Right. So I think in nutshell, I mean, we've been talking about this for past 25 minutes or so about electric cars or electric vehicles, whether we are actually getting to the mainstream, but from the take of what both gentlemen here, I think from Martin and Stefan, we are hearing, I mean, it's a long way to go. So it sounds like it is. We're not even sure that it can be in our lifetime. It sounds a little bit a long road, a long journey ahead of us. So just to wrap it up, like maybe to get your summary points or takeaways that you think you want the listeners to have some takeaways from this particular topic. What are those takeaways? Maybe we start with Martin.
Yeah, I think I think it will still be in our lifetime. I think the takeaways really for me is that whilst there's a lot of hype around EVs and EV ownership, it is something that we're all gonna at some point in our lifetime, we will all probably own or use an EV. We just have to be a little bit patient, because I think as a nation, we're a big country. We've got big distances and even just getting power cables and power lines, just even to domestic and as well as outstation, is going to be a challenge. But we have to be a little bit patient. I think the government's on the right track. I think there's probably everybody would always argue that there's more that the government could do. But I think the fact that they are making this government seems to be quite focused on making strides quite quickly, which is really positive. I think what makes hold back consumers is that people will probably be sitting on the sidelines to see what the resale value of these cars are, because I think it will be a big concern. You purchase a vehicle and you own it for 5 years, which is a normal average life cycle of a car. A normal car owner would keep it for 5 years, and then you want to sell it on. You're hoping at this point in time, we have, to be honest, we don't really have any idea what the resale value is. If you take a hybrid, if the warranty's out, half the used car dealers aren't interested, because they don't know whether there's going to be problems going forward, and will people want to buy a hybrid that's more that the warranty's expired on a battery. So I think the takeaway is that we have to be patient. We have to take it one step at a time. Maybe hybrids will be the stepping stone. Early adopters will hopefully blaze a trail, and we'll learn from the manufacturers. I think will learn from the lessons they've had in other markets. So that should benefit us in the long term, as we may actually see accelerate develop adoption, because they were able to manage. They've already experienced and solved the problems that we are potentially going to face or are facing at this point in time.
Right. Okay. Well, okay, Stefan, your takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think the electric vehicles are here, and it's just building the infrastructure around it. And looking ahead, I think we should start thinking about the next wave of innovations, which is autonomous vehicles. And in my view, I mean, if my vehicle is powered by petrol, diesel, hydrogen, or fully battery electric, that to me is not so much an issue. But once you look at how the vehicle is operated, whether it's an algorithm or if I'm in control, that is going to be much more interesting to see. So let's enjoy everything that happens with the EVs now, while we can still focus on that one, and then the next wave will surely hit.
Right. Yeah. When you're talking about those autonomous vehicles, I was just thinking about the scenes in Minority Report, the movie, and there's another one. I think I remember the car driving itself. Arnold Schwarzenegger was in that movie. I can't remember what's the name of that movie. Yeah, but yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Right, I don't want to drive myself. It would be fantastic in Malaysia, right, when we get stuck in all this traffic, and then we just sit back, relax, and let the vehicle drive us forward.
Isn't that what Grab is?
Right. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
But no, I know what you mean. I think it'd be interesting. I think autonomous vehicles is a
Yeah,
whole different world and a whole different subject.
Yeah.
It probably may not be, given the driving and the number of fatalities on the roads in Malaysia. Autonomous would probably be, if it helps reduce that down, then it's a win for everybody, I think.
Yes. So thanks so much for joining, and I'm going to wrap this up, and I'll be in touch with the podcast, the link later on.
Thanks so much, Nisha. Thanks, Stefan.
Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, Ben. Take care, Stefan. Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.